In the summer of 2019, a young man disappeared without a trace near Cape Byron in Australia, literally a minute before he went missing. Just seconds before his disappearance, his mobile phone moved along a strange route and eventually the signal was lost. But where and how did Theo Hayez vanish? Let's figure it out together. In 2018, Belgian student Theo Hayez came to stay in Melbourne, Australia, with his godfather and his family. On 25 May 2019, he arrived in Brisbane, where he visited his cousin Lisa and his brother Michael. After dinner together, he stayed the night at their place. On 29 May, Theo took a bus to Byron Bay and checked in to the Wake Up hostel, where he occupied one bunk bed in a 6-bed dorm. 2 days later, on the evening of 31 May 2019, he met his friend Antoine at a barbecue organized by the hostel. Antoine, also Belgian, was staying in the same hostel, but in a different room. Around 6:30 p.m., the two young men took an Uber back to the hostel barbecue, where they spent the early part of the evening together. After some time at the hostel, Theo, Antoine, and 4 other people headed to the Cheeky Monkeys bar, arriving there at about 9:35 p.m., where they drank beer and had fun. At one point, Theo went to the toilet. A security guard followed him and waited for him outside. When Theo came out, the guard asked him to follow and then requested that he leave the bar because he appeared close to intoxication. Theo was last seen on CCTV at about 11 p.m. when he left the bar. After his disappearance, his family gained access to his Google account and discovered that Theo had activated GPS tracking on his phone from 11 p.m. to 12:05 a.m. So the route of the phone and his average speed were recorded quite accurately. Theo began walking away from the bar, and just over a minute later, he stopped on Kingsley Street for about a minute and entered the address of his hostel into Google Maps. He then continued walking for about 4 minutes and 40 seconds to the end of Tennyson Street, near bushes surrounding the Byron Youth Activity Center, where he stopped for almost 7 minutes in total. There are cricket nets and a concrete slab there, and Google data showed his phone to be within 3 meters of this spot. Based on this, his family believes that the movement of the phone matched Theo's own movements and that he was not separated from his device. He then crossed to the other side of the sports field, winding through suburban streets towards Messenger Street. Google indicated that he walked this segment at about 6 kilometers per hour and checked Google Maps a couple of times, which always showed the route back to the hostel. From Messenger Street, he continued through other suburban streets until he reached Milne Street, where suburbia ends, and a clearing leading to Arakwal National Park, the ocean, and the lighthouse begins. From there, Theo did not follow Milne Street down to the main beach road. Instead, he turned onto a separate bush track and moved quickly through the park over difficult terrain in complete darkness. At some point, he stopped again and looked at Google Maps, which still showed the route back to his hostel. Then he headed in the opposite direction, deeper into the bushes, towards the right. Theo emerged from the scrub onto Tallow Beach via a tiny path, checked Google Maps again for the route to his hostel, and then walked to the northern end of the beach. Shortly before midnight, he left the beach at the corner and went back into the bush up a steep hill covered with dense vegetation, where he stopped for about 5.5 minutes before returning to the beach in less than 2 minutes. On June 1st at 12:05 a.m., GPS location tracking ended. According to Google, at that moment, he was at the far end of the beach. 15 minutes later, he sent his friend a Facebook Messenger message about a music group using his phone. 3 minutes after that, Theo watched a couple of minutes of a French comedy show called Burger Quiz on YouTube. 32 minutes later, he replied via WhatsApp to his stepsister in Belgium, answering an earlier message from her with a kissing emoji and a single French word, merci. 1 minute after this came the last recorded activity on his WhatsApp account. Almost an hour later, at 1:42 a.m., the final signal from his phone was detected in the Cape Byron area. Police stated that based on data analysis, Theo's phone was in sleep mode from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m., meaning it was switched on but unused. The last ping at 1:42 a.m. on June 1, 2019, was received by a tower near Patterson Street Reservoir, which has a wide coverage area. And this ping did not include the special shutdown signal that is normally sent when a phone is turned off or dies. There are several possible explanations. The phone could have moved out of range, the battery could have been removed, or the device might have been damaged, broken, or fallen into water. Once friends at the hostel and Theo's relatives realized he was missing, a search began. Police launched large-scale land, sea, and air searches around Byron Bay, joined by volunteers, locals, and other tourists. Police divers focused on the waters around Cape Byron. Helicopters, boats, drones, and dogs were used, while hundreds of hours of CCTV from the area were reviewed. Almost 3 weeks after his disappearance, his family received a ransom demand through Messenger. Over the following months, they received several more, none of which turned out to be genuine. After a month of his disappearance, police announced that the full-scale search had been called off, but the investigation would continue. At a press conference in Byron Bay, with investigators from Belgian police and Theo's family, authorities stated that the most likely explanation was an accident on the cliffs of Cape Byron. 4 days after the official search ended, volunteers continuing to look for Theo found a gray puma cap in the scrub near Talos Beach. The location of the cap matched one of Theo's last known GPS positions almost exactly. Roughly 10 days after this discovery, his parents left Australia and flew back home to Belgium. All of Theo's personal belongings, including his passport and other documents, were left in his hostel room. His bank accounts and cards have not been used since he left the liquor store on the night of May 31st, and according to his family, he had no cash on him that night and had not withdrawn large sums beforehand. There is also no evidence that he returned to the hostel that night. His swipe key was never used, CCTV was checked, and other guests were questioned. The picturesque town of Byron Bay is a popular tourist destination for both Australians and foreigners, and even attracts Hollywood stars like Hemsworth, Pesota, and Damon. But behind the glamorous image lies a darker side of drugs, violence, and homelessness. Drug-addicted drifters and rough sleepers form a sinister underside of the resort town, many living in tents outside legal campgrounds. One theory suggests that Theo fell victim to dangerous people, that he might have been robbed, abducted, or harmed after encountering the wrong crowd near tent camps where addicts and homeless people live. Although a criminal scenario is considered less likely, it cannot be completely ruled out. On September 5, 2019, 3 months after Theo vanished, a Byron Bay detective told the family that the most probable scenario
was that Theo fell into the ocean and was carried away by the current. Police explained his strange route after leaving the bar by saying he was lost and disoriented, believing he was heading back to the hostel, which seems plausible given he had been removed from the club for apparent intoxication. However, there are details that contradict this. Google Maps was open the whole time with the route back to the hostel, yet he persistently walked in the opposite direction. While on the beach, Theo chatted with his sister and a friend, and even watched a bit of a French comedy show on YouTube. So it's hard to say he was completely lost, even if he was drunk.
It seems more likely that after leaving the bar and deciding to return to the hostel, he chose to take a walk, saw the beach on the map, and headed there. The recovered cap suggests that, moving through the thick scrub, he probably snagged it on a branch and it fell off, which fits with him pushing through dense vegetation at night. After spending some time on the beach, he may have wanted to climb higher towards the rocks and lighthouse, where a drunk young man could easily fall from a cliff into the water. What really happened to Theo that night remains unknown, and apart from the cap, no trace of the missing young man has ever been found. Strikingly, this case is very similar to the disappearance of Corey McKeague in England in 2016, where a drunk young man was also ejected from a club, wandered through the night city past multiple CCTV cameras, and ultimately vanished in an area linked to rubbish loading, with his phone making a strange journey that was later traced. Yet he too has never been found. Write your theories in the comments about what you think happened to Theo Hayez that night. If you enjoyed this story and want more, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel.